Hello everyone, welcome back. One of my viewers asked me what I use for wind ribbons, right? You can see them hanging on the trees over here. So I just use contractor's flagging tape. Okay, the name of this particular brand is Presco. I got it at Lowe's. I think it was something like $3 for the whole roll. It's cheap and it works. So the way this works is if you're, I see right now we got a wind going that way. So that's 0, 5, that looks like it's 10-mile-per-hour wind. Okay, that's a 10-mile-per-hour wind right there because that's 0, that's 20. If it's doing that, then that's coming out to that's like closer to 30. But that's 0, that's 20. So then you just divide. That's 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, so when you see that wind going like this now, that's a 10-mile-per-hour wind. Okay, so I memorized the 10 mile, and also it's telling me that it's going that way. So if I'm shooting out that way, that's a full value. Because what I do is I memorize the 10-mile-per-hour numbers, and then what happens is if I have a 20-mile-per-hour wind, I just double those values. Or if I have a 5-mile-per-hour, I cut it in half. Just to give you guys an example, with a 9 millimeter that I've been working with, where are you? So So if you're working with inches, right, on the 10-mile-per-hour wind, at 100 yards, it'll move your bullet a half foot. At 150 yards, it'll move it a full foot, right, 12 inches. At 200 yards, it'll move it 2 feet. At 250 yards, it'll move it 3 feet. Okay, so I like to round my numbers off. Like I don't, like to feet because I can remember feet better than inches. And the reason is because the wind is never extremely consistent, and it does different things up and down range. So I don't get too crazy with trying to remember exact numbers. I just round it off to the nearest half foot or foot. So if I've got, let's say, at 100 yards with the 9 millimeter, let's say I've got, all right, the wind is not going that way. Okay, but let's say it's coming out 10 miles per hour that way, right? At 100 yards, it's a half foot adjustment. But what if it's doing that? Now I just doubled, right? So now it's a full foot. Or what if it's just doing a 5 mile per hour wind? Well, now it's basically just 3 inches. I just take that number and I cut it in half. So, by memorizing the 10-mile-per-hour numbers, right? I only have to memorize one set of numbers, and if the wind is double, I double the numbers. If it's half, I half the numbers, and that's for a full value, which is going sideways. If it's going diagonally, right, like this, right, if it's going in the diagonal direction, I'll also half the values as well. So that's how I figure out my wind. So see, now it just shifted that way. That looks like it's now doing about 3 miles per hour that way. And that's depends on what you're shooting and how far. A lot of times with 3 mile per hour wind, I'll pretty much ignore it. Okay, or if I see it starts favoring closer to 5 miles per hour, I'll just bump it up to 5 miles per hour. The wind it's never consistent. It normally doesn't stay at any one speed for too long. And if you've got ribbons all the way out, downrange, you'll see that sometimes the ribbons up here are going in this direction, the ribbons down there are going in the opposite direction, and that's because the wind is doing that. Okay, so a lot of times the wind will offset. The What the wind is doing downrange is going to have more of an effect on the bullet than what the wind is doing up close, and the reason is because the bullet is traveling faster out here, and as it goes further out, it starts slowing down. So as it gets further out, the value of the wind further down is going to be greater than the value of the wind up front here. And again, now we're getting into fine tuning stuff. But the main thing is if you've got like a 10-mile-per-hour wind and all your ribbons are going, let's say that way, like this. So yeah, you definitely know you gotta adjust. But anyway, that's what I use for wind ribbons, just the flagging tape. $3. I get it from Lowe's. And I just hang this up. Like I'll even go up to other ranges when I go to other ranges. I'll just hang it up all the way down. I just leave it there. Other people will use it. When other people are using the range, they'll use it. So it's something that's very valuable. There's other ways to measure wind, such as a mirage. It's not something I've been able to really work with, mostly because a lot of times when I'm shooting in the woods and stuff like that. So it's really hard for me to gauge Mirage and see that in my scope. But that's another method of trying to figure out what your wind is. That's actually the preferred method for professionals that do this thing. But you know, here's the thing: a lot of times they're working at in much more open fields, and they have when you're working with Mirage. I believe the way that works is you have to look at your target, and then you have to focus back a little bit so that you can see what the Mirage is doing a little further back. But again, that's not something I have a great deal of experience out there. But I just want you guys to know that it exists. For me, by far the far easier method to work with is just with the wind ribbons. You know, they're cheap. You can hang them up anywhere. And so thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.